I thought it would be interesting to kind of reflect a little bit on 2020. Not too long, because obviously we don't really want to be dragging up the memories of 2020, as it's not been the best vintage. But actually kind of looking at perhaps current trends and where we think things might lead into next year. Let's start with what's your biggest observation been in 2020? What's your biggest learning or observation been in 2020? And Tom, should we kick off with you?
I think my biggest learning actually is probably not technology related, but it's the resilience of the human spirit. I think it's just everybody's had to adjust to working at home and having less interaction, so they have. But also something that I've learned that, well, probably not learned, but reinforced is that, yeah, I really miss human contact, especially in a work environment. And unfortunately for us as technologists, what we have in terms of technology at the moment really doesn't bridge that.
That's an interesting point around the kind of human connection element.
Yeah, that's we're also kind of, maybe we'll touch on mental health aspects too later on, but I think the whole human interaction piece of that.
The lack of personal connection. I think we're all social beings. We touched on this in previous videos in the year, right? That as social beings, it's hard for that lack of connection. Chris, what about yourself?
If you had asked any one of us this question in, say, February, right? Imagine the different. I can't even imagine that far back, right? So what I think is fascinating is, look, I'm in management consulting, right? And before that, I was in technology consulting. And I've spent the past 20 years of my life in an industry that has been talking about digital transformation for at least a decade, right? And before that, it had a different name, but it was the same thing, right? And this whole idea of, changing the enterprise to leverage new tech and new tools and new models, new operating models, new ways of new product development, new ways of work from home, all these different things, what tech was going to do for us. 20 years we've been talking about it. And, I don't mind saying that my profession has charged quite an amount of money over that time, right, globally to help companies sort of make that transition and make that happen. And I think it would be understating it to say there's been mixed success, right? In transformation, just overall, until it turns out it's not management consulting that forces digital transformation. It's a global virus pandemic. There has been more digital transformation in the past 6 months than in the past 6 years, right?
Does that mean going around, isn't there? That what's transforming your business more, the CFO, the CTO, or COVID-19, right?
It's incredible. If you look at the pace of change, it's incredible. I mean, and the shockwaves. I mean, look, I think it's going to be, we're going to look at this in a couple of years and say, wow, that was the inflection point. It's revolutionary. It's like, smashing the looms, right? You're Ned Ludd and you're out there smashing the looms, right? That's how big of a change this is, because suddenly, a lot of companies have realized, we can do things differently. Whereas before, maybe they thought it, but they, whatever, this has been working for 50 years. Let's keep doing it this way. Yeah. Now they were forced, and it turns out it still kind of works. I get Tom's point about the social thing. I completely understand. Yeah. I imagine we'll go back to some sort of hybrid model going forward, but I don't ever foresee from a consultant's perspective, the 4 or 5 day travel work week to a client. No. I just don't think it's ever going to happen, because I think clients have realized we don't need that. We can do it remotely.
Yep. Yeah. No, interesting. Thanks, Chris. And so, Sally, I mean, what's been your kind of big observation or learning from this year?
Not to already start disagreeing with Chris, but I think my learning is massive change can happen, but then nothing changes, in that we're still our human needs, going to Tom's point, are just that's the most important thing. It's not busyness, it's that basic fundamentals of you need to eat, sleep, but then you need to look after yourself in whatever mechanism that is. And actually, for the most part, as long as you're safe, things continue on as they are, and everything else is just noise. I think it's been a real perspective giver for me. And I used to worry a hell of a lot about software eating the world and people not being aware of the amount of transformation that's happening. And actually, and maybe because I'm listening a little bit too much to Barack Obama and Michelle Obama and their reflections, but change takes a hell of a lot of time. And we're still battling systemic racism. We're still battling with the climate emergency. I learned about climate change when I was in school doing GCSE geography. That's quite a long time ago. Change takes a heck of a lot of time. Yes, there can be immediate inflections, getting everyone to work from home and everyone continues on, but that's not big change, if that makes sense.
Just to be clear, I don't necessarily know that it's good change, right? I just change, right?
Yeah.
I mean, Chris, one of the things I wanted to ask you about your digital transformation point is clearly we've had the technology for a while. Clearly we've seen the benefits for a while.
Yeah.
It's been flipped by a virus, which is kind of interesting because what that means is it wasn't an economic reason that drove it. There were business obstacles there outside of the whole technology architectural piece.
Right.
I've got some opinions on what those business obstacles were. I'd be interested in your view on that.
I think if you're talking about, business process technology, right. And there's an element there, there are human beings involved in all of that, right? You're right. The tech's been around forever. The infrastructure's been around forever, right? We've had it for 20 years kind of thing. But maybe this is Sally's point, right? People don't like change, even when they say they do, right? They don't.
They're pretending.
They pretend to like change, Yes, change is great. I mean, not right now, not this quarter, that kind of thing.
Affects me. Yeah.
And what changed here was there was no option. Right? There was no option. I'm kind of wondering, if we go back to sort of that March timeframe, at least in the US, when companies were telling their employees not to come in, and that whole snowball began. Was it fear? Was it government sort of diktat? Was it business continuity planning kicking into gear? Like what was the driver? And did they really think it's gonna potentially be a year before we come back into the office, or longer possibly, right? We were all there. I don't remember. I didn't write it down. I don't remember exactly what that driver was. It was almost, it was a fear, right? There was like oh my God, just go home. It'll blow over in a bit and then we'll come back in. And then it was like, as it dragged on, it's like, well, no, right? Now we've got to figure out a new way of working. And so I think back to your point, Tom, right? It's like, it wasn't a technology change. It was a mentality change. And what drove that? Maybe it was fear. I don't know, but that's a powerful motivator.
How has the mentalities changed when all we've done is taken the online work into a virtual setting? So like back-to-back Zoom calls from whatever your times are, from 8 till 7 at night. Like that isn't how work happens. So the mentality, I don't think, did change. We just tried to continue on as we are, but at home. Yeah, now we're trying to unpack. It is okay not to have your green dot or whatever communication system you have. Like, you're still trustworthy. You're still a valued employee if you're not like at your computer being busy. In the office environment, we're saying we will miss that social piece, but like, I would go for coffees, you go for a walk outside, you go and get your lunch, like you left your desk. And yeah, that mentality, I don't think changed that much of like that, what's the word?
Presenteeism.
That's the word.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, no, I think it's been really interesting for me to kind of talk to different organizations who clearly have a different sort of culture when it comes to remote work, or did before all this started. And many of them kind of have got to kind of increase their levels of trust, and they've had to sort of find ways of, kind of making it work, right? I'm keen to kind of move this on sort of the technology side of things, because, this has clearly been the time for technology to shine, yet I think there is so much more, technological progress we could make, but we haven't yet. I mean, I think, clearly video calling was kind of low-hanging fruit, but it's going to be interesting to see kind of where we go next, because we'll kind of talk about perhaps what we see coming in 2021. But I think, you know, to kind of steal my own punchline for later, I think the reality is it's not going to be as quick a transition back to perhaps face-to-face as perhaps everyone hopes, and therefore I think there is still room for more technological innovation to kind of make this work better, right?